Each year in America, thousands of men are falsely accused by women they know as well as strangers. The law is not on these gentlemen's side. A businessman who loses his cool after losing a multi-million-dollar contract is targeted for revenge by one of his female employees. She decides that she will rein in his behavior by accusing him of taking advantage of her from a position of authority. That executive would not make it to his car without being arrested by a cadre of officers that awaited him being off guard. He will be tried and imprisoned for years before the executive was deemed innocent by the courts. These are the stories of men who have been wrongfully accused. We start this case with the shining example of misidentification which placed an innocent man behind bars. The incident occurred on the afternoon of November the 24th, 2004. The victim? A young girl skipping along Buena Vista Road in the town of Lemon Grove, California. Oblivious to the dangers around her, she was enjoying herself as little girls do. In an instant, she felt the hairs go up on the back of her neck as she felt someone was watching her from a moving vehicle. The young lady, who can't be named here by us, says that a man began staring at her from an old light-colored truck with a fake wooden camper attached. The girl began to walk faster than she normally would under the underpass of the 94 freeway when a man, she said, grabbed her from behind and told her not to scream. She says the man then lifted her skirt and ripped her underwear in the process. She fought back her attacker, hitting him in the face with her portable CD player. It was this unexpected act on her part that startled him and allowed her to break free and run. As she ran across Buena Vista Road, her attacker caught up to her once again. He grabbed her forcefully and threw her down in some bushes near a stoplight. There he sexually assaulted her, but she didn't give in easily and kept fighting and managed to escape from him once again. This time she didn't stop running and managed to make it all the way home to her parents. At home, the little girl with instructions from the police placed her clothing in a plastic bag for detectives. She told police officers that she believed that her attacker was probably the man she saw staring at her from the old light-colored truck. The last vehicle that she remembered just before going under the overpass. She described her attacker as a white male with facial hair between 5 foot 8 inches and 5 foot 10 inches tall. His weight to be 150 pounds to 160 pounds, and she believed his age to be around his early 20s. Now, this description would fit a large swath of white males in any city you could name in the United States. Because of this vague description, police initially had no leads on her attacker, but they believed that it was best to pursue her leads while the memory was still fresh in the young girl's mind. Police drove the young girl around the neighborhood to see if she recognized anyone, but she did not. She tried to assist the police sketch artist in rendering a composite sketch, but she did not know enough details to complete it. Police believed they had a better chance of catching a break in the case with another eyewitness. The other eyewitness they found was better able to help them with the sketch. Later in town, someone saw a light-colored truck with a fake wooden camper on it and reported this truck to the police. The truck belonged to Mr. Uriah Courtney's stepfather. Uriah, a resident of San Diego, California's North Park neighborhood, was a white male, 5 foot 10 inches tall, 160 pounds, in his 20s, and he had a goatee. Yes, Uriah fit the description of a man who was ripe for the picking of the wrongfully accused. You see, when shown a picture of the truck, the victim said she was 80% sure it was the truck she had seen at the time of the assault. Police placed Uriah's photo in a 6-pack lineup, and the victim tentatively identified Uriah as her attacker, stating that she was not sure, but the most similar is number 4, which was Uriah's inserted photo. Now, however, she stated she was more confident in her identification of the truck rather than Uriah himself. She rated her confidence level at 60% on his identification. The eyewitness also identified Uriah from the six-pack lineup. Despite her uncertainties, the victim testified at trial she was sure her identification of both the truck and of Uriah. A jury, believing in the sincerity of this girl, rendered a guilty verdict, and the court sentenced Uriah to life in prison for kidnapping and rape of that young child. When Uriah was initially arrested, he was married to a wife, and between them they enjoyed their 6-year-old boy. Now, all of these things, to include Uriah's job, were about to be taken from him in the arrest. 6 long years would go by before the California Innocence Project took an interest in Uriah's case and started investigating in the year 2010. Now, this investigation protects the rights of the innocent and determines that further DNA testing would be appropriate. After all, 75% of DNA exonerations are the product of misidentification. At the time of Uriah's conviction, the San Diego Sheriff's Department performed DNA testing on the victim's fingernail scrapings and their underwear, but did not obtain any meaningful results. Why? The DNA on her clothing, although present, was not strong enough for the earlier forms of detection like it is today. Now, however, advancement in DNA technology could produce a useful result in this particular case. With the cooperation of the San Diego District Attorney's Office, the victim's clothing was resubmitted for DNA testing. The testing revealed a male profile, but not Uriah's, on both the shirt and the skirt. That male profile that was magnified from her garments was run through the Combined DNA Index System, or CODIS for short. CODIS is a national data bank containing convicted offender profiles, and sure enough, a match was attained. Whomever attacked this little girl back then was already a convicted criminal. The DNA matched a man who lived 3 short miles from the crime scene on the day of the attack and had a striking resemblance to Uriah. Which means this man knew that Uriah was taking the fall for something he didn't do. With this new evidence brought to light, Uriah's conviction was vacated on June 24th of the year 2013, 9 years after he was falsely accused. Uriah was released on May 6, 2013. Now here is a short video clip of that release, followed by his press release.
We now know, 8 years later, after Uriah spent 8 years in prison, that he was not the attacker that day. And we know that because of DNA. The biological material was found on the victim's clothing, and it didn't match Uriah. Now that wouldn't have been enough to exonerate him because, who knows how that gets there. Someone's DNA, just because it's not his, doesn't mean that much. And it was a match of an individual who lived in the area and looked very similar to Uriah. And the victim did not know him. He was a stranger to her. And when you put it all together, the weak initial identification and the match to the data bank, it was clear that this man had been convicted.
I came into a small room at the prison there, and Justin was sitting on my right, and he said that there was only 2 reasons that he would be there. And he said it's either good or bad. And he said that it's good news. And they told me about the results of the DNA testing. And it was one of the best days of my life.
Mr. Courtney, you'll find when you see him at the press conference, he is just an incredibly shy, incredibly humble guy. He's a father. He has an 8-year-old son, and one of the hardest things for him in prison was that if you're convicted of a sex offense, you're not allowed to ever see children.
My prison sentence, just that coming to an end and me moving on with my life, and this is a new lease on life for me. It's whole new experience, and I'm just grateful to be out and grateful to the Innocence Project for everything that they've done on my case. I mean, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them.
In society's rush to judgment and assuming that all males are aggressors or females ultimately blinds the eyes of the court, the jury, and the general media at large. Uriah's name was dragged all through the news, and he was mistreated at every turn of his new life as an accused assaulter of the innocents. Look now at the years that Uriah missed with this little 2-year-old boy. You can see the bond is still there in this reunification clip, followed by a news clip of the reversal of this particular case.
Extremely excited. I cannot wait. It's been since 2006. Today I get to hug my boy for the first time all them years.
Day for a local man who spent 8 years behind bars for a crime he didn't commit. Today, he spoke out for the first time since being cleared of all charges. 10 News reporter Bob Lawrence with the 2 things that made it all possible.
2004, on a residential street like this one in Lemon Grove, events would be set into motion that would turn Uriah Courtney's life completely upside down. This is Uriah Courtney, standing with his parents in the courtyard of Donovan State Prison last year. In 2004, a 16-year-old girl was grabbed off a Lemon Grove street and raped. Eyewitnesses identified Courtney as the one who did it. Justin Brooks with Cal Western Law School.
Eyewitness identification evidence is not that strong.
Nonetheless, Courtney was convicted of the assault as well as additional drug charges and looked at life behind bars at Donovan. But during the trial, the victim testified that her attacker had his face on her clothing.
From that moment on, we all knew that there was going to be DNA on her clothing. We just had to get somebody to listen to us.
The ones who listened were students at Cal Western Law School as part of the Innocence Project.
Fortunately, clothing from the victim still existed. And fortunately, we have the kind of DNA technology today that we haven't always had.
DNA testing was done initially, but it was the subsequent, more thorough testing on the victim's clothing that pointed to someone else who looked like Uriah.
They told me about the results of the DNA testing, and it was one of the best days of my life.
This is Courtney on the day he was released, but though he was out of prison, he wasn't exonerated yet of all the charges, until now.
I never thought I'd see this day.
Uriah's mother, Mary, said she wanted to yell out during the trial that her son was innocent. Then Cal Western stepped in.
Finally, to have somebody believe in my son, it was awesome.
Uriah went to prison when his son was 2. He's now 10. As for the 16-year-old who identified him in court,
it breaks my heart, for what she went through. And I don't hold any grudge against her.
He hopes that if she hasn't realized yet he wasn't the attacker, that one day she will. Bob Lawrence, 10 News.
The Men's Channel would like to thank the Innocence Project of Cal Western University and the Innocent Project for standing up to the status quo and believing that all men are guilty and that juries always get it right. For Falsely Accused, this is Charles Rivers. We thank you for watching, and we leave you now with a short but sweet lesson that Uriah passes on to all of us about living in the now.
Cultivate what you love about your life.
I love that I am a free man today. There's nothing better than being free, because when you're free, you have the chance to meet people and form relationships, to help other people, like Peter, my friend Peter Kringle, is doing with me today. I'm in Ireland today as a result of my experience. And it's a blessing to be here. I went through a terrible thing, but it's wonderful to be out, to be free, to have new friends, to meet new people, to meet you.
Yes.
I'm celebrating life.
Yeah.
When I was in prison, I lived a simple existence, and really that's all it was an existence. Today I'm actually living because I'm free.
Yes. That is so cool. To the land.
It is. Isn't that a blessing?
Yeah.
To live life
Blessing.
and to exercise freedom of choice.
Yes.
That's what I can do.